Trenderhoof, Vignette Valencia, A True Love by Srishgal. It has been a very normal day for Trenderhoof in Manhattan. Being one of the most top writers for one of the biggest fashion designs magazines, he has been given so much work lately. But one day, he noticed a new mayor actually walked into the director's office, and he asked some of the coworkers if they know who that were, but they all shook their heads and they didn't know who that could be. Afterward, only about 10 minutes later, the director and the mayor came outside from the office and announced they have a new coworker, Vignette Valencia, who is from Trondheim, has been hired by the director, part of the new fashion designs section. They have decided to open a new part of the magazine to focus mostly on the teenage section of the younger viewers of their part of fashion. And since Valencia was very good at it back in her hometown, she was very good at it. And since Trenderhoof's director heard about her, asked if she could be transferred to this particular magazine. And she was thrilled because she was just hoping to get another opportunity to work on one of the bigger fashion magazines, and she just couldn't wait to accept it. Of course, since she had no idea how this business worked there, so the director gave Trenderhoof the opportunity to show her around. And he took the opportunity as well because they had very strong policy to treat others with respect and, well, mostly for respect. Of course, Trenderhoof was very polite, very gentle to her, telling her all the things, showing around a bit of buildings, what the type of the section are, what if she needs to go to get some new copies of it or something, she had to go to that particular place, and she had to deliver something to, well, something had to be printed, she goes there to that part of the building. Of course, every time when she was going, she was always getting wrong. But that was the first few days, but because she was so new in it, with that particular building, after about a week or two, she could find any place without problem. But just then, during this time when Valencia has started working there, other stallions in the building has started having some affection for her. Trenderhoof noticed most of the mere stallions at the work actually had fallen in love with Valencia, and he couldn't blame them because she is very beautiful, she's the most gorgeous mare he had ever seen, and she's so very polite and very gentle, and she was always kind. But he has not much to focus on her because he focused mostly at work. But one day, the director told him that he had to stay overtime to make sure that the newest issue of the magazine came out right at time. Because lately, some of the opponents who work there has been calling sick, and that means less staff. So Trenderhoof had to take other responsibility and duties and make sure that the magazine is coming out at the right particular date as the published. So Valencia had also been asked to stay behind to do some overtime work to make sure it actually goes as well. Of course, Trenderhoof and Valencia had no trouble to work together. They've always been friendly, always having lunch together, inside, either in the building or outside restaurants. But they didn't spend much time talking much. But over the past few days before this, Trenderhoof had noticed how much she has been looking at him. And he asked around also the mayors some of his co-workers if they noticed something about Valencia. None of the co-workers except one, the director's secretary, actually had believed that Valencia had actually been falling in love with him. And he was very surprised about hearing that. But he didn't mind because some of the mayors in the work had been in love with Trenderhoof, and many of the other writers and readers across Equestria had a crush on him. But he was mostly focused at work. He had no time to make plans for romance or any kind of relationships. But he has often been asked by some of his friends and coworkers why he hasn't been seeing him outside dating some special stone pony. But he says that he always busy because work, writing, and that was probably all he do, even on the spare time. But that was going to change, because during this time that Valencia and Trenderhoof had to stay overnight to make sure all the work was going perfectly for next magazine to be released soon. And in the morning, when the director came to work, he saw that Trenderhoof and Valencia was sitting there at a table, drinking some coffee, drinking some tea together, and having some lunch, or eating some snack. He actually walked up to them. He thought that they haven't done much work, so he actually felt a bit angry and tried to ask them why they didn't have to do any particular work, just sitting there and relaxing. But Trenderhoof explained that the magazine is already taken care of. They were completed the magazine about 5 hours ago. But then the director asked why they're still at the work after they finished the magazine. They felt tired of it and hungry, so they decided to grab something to eat. And that was actually 5 hours ago, and they still hasn't even eaten much of their food. And after they start by just sit down, they start talking about mostly about their work and most of the newest magazine and some other things and within the fashion, and they just keep talking and talking and talking for 5 hours without a break. And then Trenderhoof has actually noticed that Valencia are in fact in love with him, and he has fallen for her. Of course, since the director had made them overwork all night, he gave them the day off the next day. But when they came back the day after that, the co-workers had noticed something was very odd between Valencia and Trenderhoof. Always smiling, talking to each other, but then, during lunchtime, they saw Valencia and Trenderhoof kissing. All the co-workers was very startled, because he had told them he was not had no time for focus on relationship or dating or any type of romance until now. They tried to ask him why suddenly all this changed from before and to now. So he explained that Valencia stole his heart and he could never be happier. Of course, he still had to focus mostly at work as well. At first, it was hard to focus at work because when he saw Valencia across the hall and smiling at him, he tried to make up his work. But that was only for about 2 times it happened. But he actually acted very professional at the work, and after work, he and Valencia spent a lot of time together. Either go to restaurants, having dinner. It didn't take much time because rumors to spread across in the office, and particularly at the building, saying that Trenderhoof and Valencia are an idol. Of course, it didn't take much time for them to officially announce they are being together, and the director had no problem for them to be being together as long as they can work together as professional and not permit them and not make sure that their privacy is not interfering with their work. And it did. They kept all the professional work at work, and of course during breaks at work then they could have some some private time, but just had some conversation between each other, but at work, otherwise they kept it professional. And of course, it happened one time after they'd been together for about a few weeks that Valencia couldn't stop talking to Trenderhoof during his business to one of those writings, and the director, he was the first did not pay much attention to it, but some of the other coworkers mentioned it to him, and he said, "If you have to be working here, keep working. Don't let your personal life interfere with the work." And he promised not to be doing it, and it didn't happen again. Of course, then Trenderhoof got a message from the director that he has to be transferred from Manhattan to Canterlot. And he suddenly was just asking why. But it was not as only temporary solution, because he has only been transferred to helping out one of the company's magazine publisher there for about a week or two. And of course he didn't mind that. Valencia, she said that she will miss him, but that she will always be knowing that he will be back, and it's only for about 2 weeks max. So during the time, she had been working for her part and his work in Manhattan. But during the part for so long, it took a lot of power, a lot of energy from both, but deep down, they know they will be together soon. And when the 2 weeks was actually up, Valencia was hoping that Trenderhoof will be back soon, but she heard one of the co-workers saying that Trenderhoof won't be back. He actually been transferred permanently to Canterlot. And she couldn't even explain it or even believe it. She thought that was just some rumors they heard from others. So she asked the director. He confirmed that Trenderhoof was actually being transferred to Canterlot magazine department, but not for permanently, but only for a very extended time, for about a week more. And Trenderhoof actually thought about maybe be home soon. And after that week was over, and sure enough, Trenderhoof was back in Manhattan, and both Valencia and Trenderhoof was happy to see each other again. And of course, they couldn't spend a lot of time then, because now they had a very special magazine issue number to be released soon. This particular number, the magazine is going to be at least twice as big as normally. Normally they have about this magazine to do is 20 pages long, but they decided to beat it a double, which makes double more time, double shift, and even more longer overtime work. Of course, then has to be more overtime, but as long as they work together, they know that they will make this work perfectly. And after this magazine was published, it was a great hit for especially the magazine. It was one of the biggest success in a long time for this company. And after nearly working so much over the past year, after the next year afterwards, Trenderhoof and Valencia had been granted vacation time. And that was actually their first, especially Trenderhoof's first vacation in over 2 years. He decided to take Valencia to a tropical resort island on the coast. And it was just a great time. They swim around in the ocean, laying on the beach, sunbathing, and even playing some volleyball. And even had some romantic dinners at the restaurant or even at the local hotel they were staying in. But then, something else did happen. Valencia had actually fallen more in love with Trenderhoof. And Trenderhoof, he has something to ask her. But he didn't feel ready to ask her yet. He decided to wait a little bit longer, just in case. And since everything seems going to well between them, but then, around the same winter, when they had just after Heartwarming Eve, which would be their first being together, Valencia fell ill because during work she was she even noticed by some of the coworkers that she didn't seems to be out of phase at the moment. She seems to be feeling well, talking, but then suddenly just swinging slowly back and forward instead. And she asked if she was okay. She said that she was okay, and she's a little bit tired. She has been didn't get much sleep last night, but she would work out. But then, at the same time, when Trenderhoof was actually in at the director's office talking about the next upcoming magazine issue, they heard a commotion outside. It turns out Valencia had fallen to the ground. She had fainted. Some of the coworkers tried to wake her up, but it was pointless. She was out conscious. They immediately called for an ambulance, which took her to the hospital, and turns out she was very, very ill. The doctors told her that she has been falling sick with one of those very strong case of the pony flu, and she needed to be hospitalized for about 2 weeks. And of course, after 2 weeks, she was released from hospital and she was full back to health. But the director had given her some time off, just a couple of days, to make sure that she's fully rested. And during her time off from work, Trenderhoof thought it was the perfect time to ask. He actually went to her place and asked her if she wanted to marry. And she couldn't say more than yes. Soon they announced this to the public and to the friends, and it was one of the biggest events in the year. The wedding was actually held in the spring the next year, and of course, they actually went back to the same tropical resort for honeymoon for 2 weeks. But then, 4 years later, Valencia announced to her friends and some of her family that she and Trenderhoof is going to be parents. And all of them was actually very, very excited. And especially Trenderhoof was so excited to be a parent. And only a few months later, they actually had twin daughters. Both Trenderhoof and Valencia were so happy to be parents. And that's how Trenderhoof continued Valencia from the true love got a family. The end.